All right, everyone, here we go. Lesson 10 on social and societal influences on child development. We're going to look at these influences this lesson, and then moral influences, and then that will culminate our look at child development. So hopefully you are cruising along on your child creation, and you should have everything that you need after today's lessons. Okay. So again, just to review, we've been looking at the primary topics of child development, which are biological development, that physical development, cognitive development. So Piaget, Case, Vygotsky, how are they actually formulating knowledge? Then we looked at personal and psychosocial. That was all our Erikson stages, looking at how kids have to work through those stages in order to continue on. And if they don't fully realize all of the stages, they might get hung up. They biologically continue on, but they might get hung up on one of those psychosocial stages. We're also going to now today look at social and societal influences on development. And as I said, we'll wrap up with lesson 11 on moral development. Okay, so just a little bit of a review here. Remember that we looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, also called psychosocial development. Remember, psycho is yourself, one person, and social is your interaction. So basically, in the classroom especially, we want our kids to feel physiologically safe. So that's why breakfast programs, things like that happen. That's why we want to make sure that kids aren't bullied, because if they're not physiologically feeling safe or fulfilled, they can't learn anything. Then this is a little bit more around the bully side, safety. They need to feel safe. They need to feel that sense of belonging in our classroom. If we have kids that don't really feel like they belong, it's going to be a tough go for them to learn. And then these are ultimately kind of what we are aiming for, are where the child feels secure in their own self-esteem, and then self-actualization, where they can start to look at the world through other people's eyes. Okay, so that's just a bit of a review on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We also looked at Erikson's psychosocial theory. Again, it's an 8-stage or 9-stage theory, depends on if you believe in that 9th stage. And again, then we want our kids to be going through the stages in a nice, healthy manner. In our Collaborate time, be ready to narrate your tableau during Collaborate, about 30 to 45 seconds of narration about the main points of the stages of Erikson's 9 stages. So again, be ready to do that during Collaborate. Okay, let's now jump into the whole, I'm just going to move this, the whole idea. I'm going to give you kind of an overview of social or societal influences, and then we'll look specifically at a theory, because of course, as you know, there's always a theory that goes behind these things. So basically, these are the three main, I'm going to grab my little pencil here again, the three main aspects that are going to be influencing our children, particularly in school: family, school, and peers. Probably that is not a big surprise to you. So family, families are diverse nowadays. Some students in their families are really nurtured and supported, and others are not treated very well and are treated quite harshly or ignored. And you as the teacher have to be aware of your students' family situations, because it's imperative that you know what is going on, because what is going on in the family absolutely affects what is going on in the classroom. Some of our students will come from families of divorce, from poverty, from economically advantaged. Some of them will have siblings. Some of them will be only children. Only children, that doesn't sound right. They will be from a family where they are the only child. How about that? That sounds a little bit better. And all of these varieties influence the children in and beyond the classroom. So if you're wondering why maybe a child is distracted, and you find out that maybe they are not sure if mom is going to be home, or if there's going to be somebody different in the house when they get home. Those are all stressors that absolutely affect what happens in the classroom. We also have the concept of parenting styles. So we have some parents that are very authoritarian, so they're very restrictive, they're very punitive, it's very top down. So again, be thinking about how this will manifest itself in the classroom. If a child comes from that kind of a family, they may either, a very authoritarian family, they may either absolutely follow the rules to a T, or they may absolutely push back and really rebel against those rules because they have no space they have no space to try things because they're being controlled by an authoritarian parent. You can sometimes have authoritative, where the parent encourages the child, to take some risks, but within boundaries. We also have neglectful parents. Unfortunately, these are parents who are kind of uninvolved in the child's life. So you might have a mom or a dad that is very invested in their career, and they are supplying the child with all sorts of material goods and things, but they're not really involved in the child's life. And so that's a bit of a neglectful. It's not necessarily somebody who is working 3 jobs and in a lower socioeconomic situation. We often find neglectful parenting in high socioeconomic situations where the parents are drawn away to work. And then we have sometimes the indulgent parents, and these parents are highly involved with the child but place very few limits on the child. And sort of this ultimately is detrimental because the kids are often out of control and they're pushing in every direction, but they never hit a wall. And kids want to, even though they say they don't want to, kids want some boundaries. And I think it's important for you to know a little. I mean, you're not going to send a survey home and say, what kind of parent are you? And then there's no judgment. It's just sort of the fact that you need to know as a teacher that if you have a child that is comes from a home that's very indulgent, then they may have trouble, legitimate trouble, keeping in control because they've never had to be in control before. Okay, so those are some of the parenting styles. We also right now are living in a really changing family unit in an ever-changing society. It's really, I think this time is one of the fastest changing times in history, and with that is a change in family unit. So you may have kids that have 2 parents, grandparents, siblings. You may have a child that has a mom and a mom, a dad and a dad, a combined family. They may be living with their grandparents. They may be living with guardians. So again, we can't assume. So when we talk about, what does your mom do? What does your dad do? What do you do when you go home? We have to be aware that some of these kids are living in really, really diverse situations. And again, there's no judgment. It's not good or bad. It's just we need to know as a teacher so that we are supporting those children in the best way. And the socioeconomics, especially right now in COVID time, I think we need to be aware that we are going to have some low socioeconomic parents and families in our classrooms. Low income parents generally tend to value external characteristics such as obedience and neatness. They like to see school as the teacher's responsibility, and they like to criticize and use physical punishment. So you might have a child. Those are sort of, again, general characteristics, not specific. There are obviously exceptions. Middle-class parents usually are more likely to value internal characteristics such as self-control, delayed gratification. They see education as a mutual responsibility, so they all see, okay, what can I do as a parent to support you as a teacher versus, you're the teacher, go, you teach my kid. And they're more likely to explain, praise, and reason with the child. High socioeconomic is actually a really interesting combination of both that sort of really authoritarian, lots of control, you're the teacher, you do your job, I'm doing mine, and then that combination of middle class. Okay, so that's the family influence on how our children are acting in class. Okay, again, this is ultimately with the goal of you understanding your children in class so that you can be the most amazing and efficient teacher out there. Okay, so now let's look at school, the actual influence that school has on a child's development, on a child's ability to learn. So again, we have some changing social developmental context. So basically, if you are in Division 1, it's all about the classroom and it's all about the teacher and it's all about relationships with the teacher and the classroom. Then in Division 2, classrooms, teachers, and peers start to become super important, right? Secondary school, that social field becomes the entire school. So now the kids can interact with hundreds of kids, not during COVID time, but hundreds of kids, and peers become the most important part of their influence. At that junior high, secondary stage, whereas at Div 1, it's more about the parent and the teacher and that little tight classroom. Remember when you were in elementary and you didn't get in the class with your friend and it was like you weren't going to see your friend for the whole year? It's very insular in there. And we are developmentally appropriate education. We are viewing education, like what it actually is, what education is changing. We're starting to get sort of away from just a content-based education system to a more inquiry-based. And so as we do that, how we actually teach changes. So you might start to see more group work. You might start to see more collaboration. You might start to see students going out into the community a bit more than in the past. So again, school should not be and is not stagnant, but we always have to be thinking, what is developmentally appropriate education for our students? Okay, so that's a fairly big influence on our students. And finally, peers. Same age interaction plays a really unique role. So kids, when they're 10 years old and they're playing with 10 and 11-year-olds, it provides them a source of information and a comparison from the outside world. So they're starting to see that there's other viewpoints out there. So again, peer relations are absolutely critical, really at all levels, but start to really become influential at that late elementary, junior high, high school stage. Good peer relationships are associated with protection against school dropout and delinquency. So if you have a good set of buddies, they usually keep you in school. They let you have a positive mental health attitude. So yeah, I might have failed that test, but you know what? I'm a good person. I have lots of friends. They're supporting me, those kind of things in there. And it's just normal development. It is normal development for peers to become more important than parents in there. Okay, so let's look at status. And this is a really interesting thing, especially in the era of social media, is being popular, getting lots of likes, getting happy face emojis instead of sad face emojis is a huge thing, especially for middle school, junior high, and high school. And I think that you will be dealing with kids who are feeling depressed because they didn't get as many likes on a post as their friend did. And so I think you have to be aware that those are absolutely affecting how they're seeing themselves and how they're seeing themselves in this sort of status of friends of society in there. Ultimately, we don't want bullying to be an issue. That's when somebody is a victim of peer aggression, and it's usually something repeated, and it's usually systematic, and it's an abuse of power that somehow the bully has gotten. Often, the bully is themselves, or is himself or herself, really reaching out for attention, for positive attention, and that's the way that they're unfortunately getting it. Okay, and ultimately we want our kids to have vibrant and solid, good, positive friendships in our class. And so I think we need to be, again, be aware as parent or as teachers, and that we need to be looking at all of these influences in the classroom. Okay, let's jump now into the theory of social development. So, see, I always told you, there's always a theory. There's always a theorist. So this is Bronfenbrenner's bioecological model of social development. And here is Uri Bronfenbrenner. He is a Russian American. He did his undergraduate degree in psychology and in music. He served in the U.S. Army Medical Corps as a psychologist, and his dad was a clinical pathologist and worked with mentally challenged people, and that really influenced his own work when developing social development model. It's this particular model is one of the most prominent descriptions of the influences that environmental contexts have on the social development of individuals. So this is kind of one of the main social development models that you'll come into. And again, it's important that you have an idea of this system, because you need to recognize that there are a lot of influences that are weighing positively or negatively on our students. So let's have a look at these particular theories. Okay, so we have the individual here. I'm grab my pencil here. We have the individual in the center. That's the individual student. Right close to the individual student is, let's see if I can draw this guy, is the microsystem. Okay, so the microsystem is direct interaction with parents, teachers, peers, and others. Okay, so this is the family unit. These are siblings. These are people that the child comes in direct contact with, usually on a daily or weekly basis. And the student is not a passive recipient of these interactions, but helps construct the setting. So if you think about a family unit, and you have a dad, and 3 kids, all of those 5 individuals create the microsystem. So they're not just passive. Hopefully, they are part of developing the microsystem. Okay, so that's kind of their immediate world. Who do they see on a daily basis, and how do they interact with those guys? Okay, we also then have the mesosystem, and this is linkages between the microsystems, such as family and school, parents and peers. So an example of this would be a parent-teacher conference. So this is when you're bringing together, so here we go, here's our mesosystem. So you're bringing together family and school. So when you go for a parent-teacher interview, when you go for a parent-teacher interview, you are actually engaging in the mesosystem, where you're linking. So now that the students' worlds are coming together. So they experience school at a micro level, but usually the parents don't go with them all the time. So when the parents and the school meet, then that's the mesosystem in here. I'm going to read you a little bit of an example of one, because I think it's interesting to hear examples of these systems. So, our religion differs from most of my son's schoolmates. We do not celebrate Halloween or Christmas or most of the holidays that his classmates do. Sometimes this is difficult for his friends or classmates to understand. Saphir, my son, does not believe in Santa or the Tooth Fairy. There is the Tooth Mommy and Tooth Daddy. We teach our son not to lie, therefore we do not lie to him. I want my son to be accountable for his actions and to know the consequences will come directly from me or his father. Sometimes there is a little clash of culture between his family, friends, and school, but Saphir handles it in stride. Okay, so that's a combination of the family beliefs, the friend beliefs, the school beliefs, and then how the child has to navigate all of that. Okay, so that's the mesosystem. We also then have the exosystem. And the exosystem is the indirect settings and agents that have an impact on the child. So again, I'm going to give you an example. I think that's the easiest way. So say the child has a mother or a father that is in the military service, and they have to deploy. They have to go off somewhere to do their job. So when one parent deploys and the other one stays home for long stretches of time, the responsibilities of running that household fall to the parent that's left behind, and daily routines change, and maybe the relationship with the child changes because suddenly that one parent is tired and can't do everything that normally the two parents do. So the stress of running the household, the stress of worry about the spouse that is deployed can be great. So the actual job and the actual indirect agent, the actual parent having to deploy and go away, has a direct impact on the child. So even though the child themselves is not the one that's going to be deployed or go overseas, because of that situation, their daily life is impacted. So that's the exosystem. Okay, so that's looking specifically, that example is parents' work environment. Mass media, here it is. Here is when the child has their phone and is constantly addicted to their phone, looking at things that are being fed to them through social media. That again will have, even though they're not in control of what's coming to them, they are actually being affected socially, and their social interactions are different because of that. Okay, let's go into macro system. This is the broader culture in which the children live. So this is, here we go. Here's the macro system out here. So these are things like laws, social conditions, economic system, right? Kids are feeling the weight of, if parents are not working right now in COVID, they're feeling the weight of financial burden, even though they're not directly related to that. They're feeling the weight of the downturn in the economic system. And I'm going to just give you one example here. So Canada has ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Children. By focusing on this, teaching and resources go into protecting and promoting child, which will then, goes into protecting and promoting the child, and this will end up affecting individual students. Okay, you could look at immigration laws. So if we as a nation change immigration laws, that will change either the situation of the child, either to good or bad. Okay, so again, it's the broader culture in which the children live and how that culture supports or doesn't support children will go all the way from this macro system. It will absolutely change how the individual child relates to the world. And it's not on here, but I like this one too. It's called the Chronos system. It is one of his. It's just not sort of on his main bioecological model. But this is the social historical conditions of a child's development. So, for example, students that are living in 2020, their lives are quite different than maybe their grandparents or their great-grandparents. So this is like the first tech age, right? So they're dealing with all these crazy things around tech that their grandparents or great-grandparents didn't have to deal with. Think about the overall society of 1920 versus 2020, and sort of the how you view the world, how you view yourself. Children were, what's the term? Seen and not heard, right? It was very much, I'm going to have lots of kids so they can help me on the farm. That was the reality of the time. Whereas now we have a very different view of children, and we value children as children, not as sort of potential future workers in there. Think about being part of an LGBTQ plus community in 1920 compared to 2020. Okay, so that's the Chronos system. That's the social historical condition of child development. How were children viewed on a broad sort of historical concept? Okay, it's super interesting, and I think that as a teacher, you need to know what's affecting that child. Why is that child coming to school and acting the way that he or she is? And all of these things we need to consider. All of these things. And we will consider. Let's have a look at what you're going to do and collaborate. So I want you to share your example of any of the systems. So I want you to create an example. So like I created some of those, I want you to create an example of a system. And then your colleagues will try to figure out which system you are talking about. So that's step one. And then step two is share in a group of 4 your child's microsystem and mesosystem. So I'm kind of pushing you a little bit to share some of your actual child creation from assignment 1. Is I want you to share that with your group of 4 in Collaborate. Okay. And oh, I thought I had one more slide. That is it. Okay, awesome. Hopefully that sparks your interest in sort of the social aspect of what kids are coming to you with in your classroom. All right, take care.